we will get started. For those of you who are watching now and don't know or are watching this in the future, this is our X-Men 97 review panel. Once again, Stefania is here. Always happy to have you. And then we have Alicia and Justin Wilder of the Ex-Wife podcast, and we are ready to rock. So this episode was a bit of a, not in a bad way, but it definitely took a hard turn from what we experienced in the first two episodes. This one got a little freaky, a little bit on the adult side of it. We ended episode 2 with Jean Grey, or somebody who resembles Jean Grey, showing back up at Xavier saying, "I need the X-Men," and now we begin with this person who looks very much like Jean Grey laying on, I guess, a hospital bed, and Beast is running all of his experiments and is like, well, then before that, you have the person who we did think was Jean Grey reach into her mind and see all these fragmented memories where Jean is faceless and all of these. And I don't know, how did this hit you guys? I'll start with you, Stefania.
Well, like you said, this episode is much more adult. And the themes in this episode were just fantastic, because you have the theme of like motherhood and, separation and stuff, and things that you do for your child, and also manipulation and doing things to others without consent. Sinister really ripped up both their minds, and without their knowledge, without Jean's knowledge, especially because she was the original. I love this episode. It is my favorite so far.
Yeah.
And I just think seeing the Goblin Queen the transformation was so cool. And I forget the voice actress's name, if you guys know. I don't remember her name, but she did a fantastic job playing Goblin Queen, playing Jean. It just sounded so amazing. She sounded so amazing. And I loved the scary aspect of this show. We got Jubilee says it, I think. It's like a very bad horror film. And and then Morph goes, "We're in hell," which is really funny. But I loved the scary aspect of this. It was really cool to see that side of the X-Men. And also, I know we're going to get into all the themes and stuff and everything that happens in the show. I think the themes in this episode are very important, as are the other 2 episodes very important. And I just know here on out, we're going to see so many more important themes, learn so much more things throughout the show, throughout the X-Men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'll flip to the other side of the camera. Justin, what was your initial takeoff of all that?
Wow. I mean, I was blown away by the facelessness of the visitor, right? We have the stranger. We don't know what to call him. I mean, we know, we've seen the whole episode, but you have real Jean, and then you have Goblin Jean that's going to become the badass that she becomes. But the fact that the person that's come to the door is seen as faceless in the comics, that is how Madeline is portrayed, especially when they dive into her mind, because she's grasping at those memories. So to see that flipped, and then, Alicia, you had called out the flare of the diamond in Maddie's head as she's trying to search deeper into Jean's mind. Yeah. So, I mean, we'll call it like it is. It's Maddie and Jean, we know. And, just seeing the fact that everybody's confused, everybody's excited, and everybody's ready to get terrified, because that went wild throughout the rest of the episode. Yeah, Stefania, like you're calling out, I think your name's Jennifer Hale, right? I think that's Jean Grey. Yeah, and she did an amazing job, not only with the range of the 2 characters, but distinguishing them in vocal quality, so that you have a different affectation for Maddie when she is like taunting the team and just playing with them after having been wronged.
Yes. Yeah, she did such a great job.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a gigantic Goblin Queen Madeline Pryor fan. Like, I love her. So for me, just like as soon as the second episode ended and the other Jean shows up at the door, I was very excited, because I wasn't expecting to get Goblin Queen so soon. So that was just like right off the bat, I was like, "Oh, I'm going to love this episode. There's nothing that can make me not like it." But I really like how from the beginning, from the moment that Jean falls into Morph's arms and the team is like experimenting and Beast is talking about the results, that you can already sense the tension in the room. Like you can sense how they're distancing themselves from this clone automatically, and she's automatically feeling isolated. And I thought that they did such a good job with kind of giving you the full scope of her story arc, like in, even though we got it, you know, in this condensed way, we still got the feeling of her, like the separation and the otherness that she feels, and this like grasping for her own sense of self, which I think is really important also. So I thought, you know, even though they told the story differently in the comics, they still did a really good job of giving us the same emotional reaction to what was happening to her as we got when we read the comics.
A woman scorned, wronged.
Yeah, and there was an interesting thing in there, and I wondered how much of this was intentional and what the meaning was, because when, like you said, we'll just call it what it is. When Madeline goes into Jean's mind and sees all these fragmented, faceless memories, at the very end of it, she sees Sinister, and that like shocks her out of that state. And she doesn't immediately turn in and say the X-Men, Sinister's behind this.
Right.
You know, she doesn't mention it to them at all. Now, whether like subconsciously that was blocked or she knew and didn't want to like out herself right on the spot, like so clinging this delusion to I am the real Jean Grey.
Or even is Sinister's control over her that we see as we go in, is that now triggered because she's been prying around in whatever has been left within either of their minds for, you know, Beast calls it later on, he's got a signature to his work. This is Sinister. And had he embedded defenses to discovering who was what and what was going on in there against telepathy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I really do feel as though you have to, on some level, feel for Scott a little bit in this. You know, talk about like what a mind screw this has got to be for him. Like,
well, maybe
this
you
woman,
do, maybe you don't.
Yeah, this woman who you've known forever, who like 5 seconds ago you were probably hugging, kissing neck, all these things. Oh, we have a baby, we're so happy to. All of a sudden, oh, I might not actually know you. Yeah. And when that one wakes up, she's going to be mad at me. So I need. But what if I'm wrong? But what if I'm right? Yeah. But we're putting a lot of trust in Beast on this one.
Got a lot of flack in our conversation. Scott got a lot of flack from Alicia on his lack of response, his stupefied stoicism, as he didn't really seem to back up his, you know, whatever she is, whether who's a clone. The fact that Magneto calls it cold, our Jean is the clone. You know, this is the woman that you've been hanging out with for years and are potentially married to, regardless the mother of your child. Right. But, and he's just like, what a sticky situation. I don't know what I'm going to do out of this. Thanks for those science notes.
What was your takeaway from that, Stefania?
I mean, yeah, you saw it in like the what they do so well in this show is the kind of like freeze frames of reactions, because we saw it with Sunspot in the first one, and then in this one with Scott, when Madeline turns around and his reaction is just like plain face, no reaction at all. I think they play really well with those reactions. But yeah, I can only imagine what Scott must have been going through in his mind, because like for years, I mean, we can theorize where they were swapped, but like it's years that she's been Madeline and she's been with Cyclops, and so to like have, you know what, I actually I watched or read or something. It was like, why didn't Sinister just wait for Jean and Scott to have a baby themselves? Like, they were well on their way to doing that. And I was like, you know what? You're so right. Like, he went throughout all that to make a clone for them to have a baby when, like, he could have just waited for Jean and Scott to do it, because they were on their way to doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really funny. But yeah, I feel for him a bit. And now, at the end of the episode, I mean, we'll talk about it, I guess, but I'll just say it now. Jean, the real Jean, goes into the bedroom and they're just standing there facing each other, like speechless, nothing to say. And then we're left off on that. So we'll see where that story goes in the whatever episode comes next for them, their storyline.
Yeah, the one thing that we learned, if we're looking at this as an adaptation, the first two episodes of this series, we learn how great tactically Scott Summers is. And in the third episode, we realize how terrible he deals with emotional situations.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
he just locks up. Like,
Oh, I also have another thing. Have you picked up the X-Men 97 comic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you read it?
Yeah.
Scott in that one too is like, come on, dude.
Yeah.
You gotta pick up on these things.
Yeah.
Well, if you get into the background of like dead parents, orphan, all this kind of stuff, like, yeah, matters of the heart aren't his best. The fact that he landed a girl and get his gene like blows my mind to begin with. Except for the fact that she can look into his mind and see how genuine he is and how he feels about her. Yeah, but the big thing that I really took away from coming up was the amazing Goblin Queen transformation scene where she's there with the baby and Sinister starts talking through the baby monitor, because that's not going to like give you nightmares in and of itself.
Yeah.
And we go through this like Japanese anime style transformation into the Goblin Queen, which was just absolutely incredible. Alicia, what do you think about that?
Okay. Well, I watched a lot of Sailor Moon as a kid, so I was really excited. But I can never get over how good the animation is in this show, and like every single episode, there's something that's like more and more beautiful that I gush over, and I could watch over and over again. Like, we saw this episode at the premiere, and then we watched it twice on Wednesday. Like, I want to look at it again. Like, I just think it's gorgeous. But as far as the scene and the conversation, I think it was really cool to see like the way that Sinister sort of was seeping into her mind. Like, he was first just talking to her and just sort of like seeing if he could lure her and like play on her feelings and this sort of feeling of abandonment that she was having from the rest of the X-Men. So could he pull on that and like twist her? And then I think like he was sensing her hesitation, so he started to like slowly ease into controlling her instead of just like instant takeover of your mind, because then it leaves her with this sense of uncertainty of like, is she actually a villain, or is she being controlled by Sinister, and like, is she enjoying herself as a villain? Like, I loved watching her like enjoy being bad,
Torment
like
them.
The scene when she walks into the like back into the living room and she's like, oh, what's my name? And like, oh, don't fall, like, just like the way that she just went from so scared and helpless to so insanely in control of herself, not really, but thinking she is.
I know not what I do.
She just became so amazing to watch, and I loved every second of it.
Yeah.
I think the animation.
Yeah,
sorry.
The animation. It was like getting to see her having her, like, she's having her villain era, right now. Yeah, especially when she does a thing and, like, she, just like you said, like, she's very resistant to it. And then eventually, like, once she basically just says, fuck it. Like, and then she's like, they will feel my inferno, and has the whole thing going on. Stefania, your thoughts?
I was watching the episode again today because Saturday morning cartoons, right? And I got to the part where she's in the doorway when she comes back in the like living room area, and I just love like the close up, not like close up, but the angle they have of her and in the doorway and the animation and her words, how she says it, all that put together. That's like probably like a small, very small part of the show, but my favorite part because of how well the animation and the dialogue and how it's being said is put together. And then also like when they go to Sinister's castle, and she's like on that throne, right? And that angle of her where she uncrosses her legs, like, girl!
Yeah.
Like, oh my god. Like, it's a good thing they didn't go with the loincloth and, like, under boob showing costume.
Yeah.
Like, this is a cartoon still, but, like, there were some adult elements in this episode, which I loved. But, yeah, the way, I think it's really Jennifer Hale's portrayal of Goblin Queen that makes her one of my favorite characters right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, for sure.
Justin, what you got?
Yeah, it was so just immediately scorned to taking over the situation, and I loved how they slow brought us in with Sinister and the ways that then that magnified with his torment of the entire team throughout the mansion through Madeline and her abilities, and to just see those things ratchet up as though we were going to the top of the roller coaster and then just plummet into the inferno that was created around us. I felt like all of the, you get this huge varied action sequence, but still kind of happening within the mansion. It's like almost the danger room come alive with demons everywhere, which I thought was just entirely too epic, and really her having so much fun with it, and essentially playing with them, showing them their deepest fears or darkest moments, or what happens to them when they let their guard down, and really just coming into, I was scared, I was offended that everybody walked out on me, but now I got it. Like, I'm playing, we're having fun.
And I just, I really want to say that the last live that we did, talking about episodes 1 and 2, and there was a great amount of discussion among Stefania and Michelle and Dylan about Gambit's crop top, and about how he was more than a snack, he was a whole meal, and about Magneto and the daddy vibes, and look at this boy. I'm just going to, for the record, say Goblin Queen Jean, yes.
I mean, a toy is sold out on Hasbro now, so let that be an example.
I got it downstairs. I still haven't opened it yet. Had to have it.
Same here. The one thing that did crack me up, and I don't know if you guys felt this way too, but just prior to that scene, Beast is in the lab. He's looking at microscope, and all of a sudden he yells. He figures out that Sinister is behind the clone, and his first thing he says is like, Scott, you got to go get Nathan, and then, for it being something that sounds urgency, he gives a really long Beast response as to why. Like, there is a man who is so terrible he can only just be like, Scott, Nate, Sinister, go. Like,
But he can't. I just wanted to say, in terms of the Goblin Queen, like her look, I've been shopping.
When are we getting this? Is this something, just a cosplay coming up? Is this going to be for Uncanny Experience? What are we
like? I just had some of the elements, and I couldn't wait any longer to do them. So I don't know, soon.
Yeah, I'm excited for that, because anybody anytime is gonna do a new X-Men cosplay, I'm all about, yes, let's do it. So now we move into like the whole House of Horrors scene that happens. And first of all, there's the whole joke with Morph and the whole like, oh look, Rogue and Magneto have it like all booked, and just watching Remy sink. I don't know, like I don't have the heart spot for him for other people do, so I kind of enjoyed the needling a little bit.
Oh.
Maybe that was just me, but other people are like, oh, don't do that to Gambit. He's a sweetie. Like, are you sure about that? But
I don't know that I would call Gambit a sweetie, but the thing is, like, I have this really deep inner turmoil in terms of what's happening with their relationship, because on the one hand, I'm like so pro Rogue and Magneto. I just think it's so wonderful and so sexy, and I'm so here for it. But at the same time, like, Gambit and Rogue in my heart is like such a special place. So like, if circumstances were different, it's difficult to want Rogue and Magneto together when Gambit is there. That's the struggle, So like, I feel bad for him, because it's like, you don't want to see Gambit get his heart broken and like ripped out by Magneto, but at the same time you want to see Rogue and Magneto together, so it's difficult. It's difficult. And
it seems like he's denying it. It seems like he's seeing the signs and just like, oh no, they're just doing something else. I'm like, oh, Gambit, you sweet boy.
Yeah.
It's the way Morph says that like Rogue is really trying to boost her stamina or something like that. It's like more.
Yeah, right.
That really hit hard.
Yeah.
Keeps like pushing the button and
Yeah.
looking at it.
I love that. Made me love
Wow.
Morph so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I sort of feel like Rogue and Gambit are Jim and Pam before Jim and Pam existed.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
they're going to have a path, but let's face it. At the end of the day, in the animated show, Rogue is not going to end up with Magneto. Like, let's
Yeah.
be honest.
I
They're
know.
going to have their fling. She's going to have her era with Eric, and then she's got to go through. She's got to work through some daddy issues. That's okay. But ultimately, she's going to end up with Remy. I firmly believe that.
Yes. Also, I apologize. I think I misgendered Morph. I think I said they.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to do that all the time. That's just because I'm old, not because I'm right. Like, I want that to be clear. Yeah, and the whole, speaking of that, the whole, like, twisted scene, like, anybody out there who has had a really big crush on someone who was with someone else can relate to the scene of Gambit seeing like Rogue and Magneto like skin melting into each other thing. Like if that doesn't hit you on some kind of like deep primal level, I don't know what does. What'd you think about that one, Stefania?
I just find it funny that he comes out and he's like, I can never unsee that. I mean, it was kind of like disturbing. I mean, the skin is just melting into each other. But I also, I mean, like, I'm one that loves Rogue and Gambit together, but like, Rogue and Magneto is pretty spicy, not gonna lie. And just seeing that, especially in their Savage Land era too, it's like, wow. But I felt really bad for Remy. I mean, in the was it first or second? No, second episode at the end, he like sheds a tear or whatever, and he holds the Queen of Hearts and he drops it. I'm like, oh my god, it's heartbreaking. I feel so bad for him, and I'm just thinking like, your time will come. Don't worry, we just have to wait it out. I see a lot of tweets and videos where it's like, ew, Rogue and Magneto together, gross, why do they do that? I hate that so much. And I just want to be like, guys, it's for the plot. It's for the plot. They're not going to stay together, trust me. I actually want to make a video about that later, so, stay tuned for that. But I just feel bad for Remy in the end. I feel so bad for him. But I know he'll be okay, and they'll end up together in the future. No worries. We're going to find out, because like people were saying, oh, Rogue is cheating on Remy and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, y'all, they weren't really together. Let's put that out there. We don't even know what happened between the last season of the animated show and then now we have the comic series for that. So we'll find out about what's going on, but they technically weren't together. And their trope is that they're on and off. They have an on and off relationship. That's their trope. So don't worry.
Yeah, because that is kind of the thing. Like the best you could define it as the animated series is they had a flirtationship.
Yeah.
Obviously complicated by the whole like I can't touch you thing, but you're right. They weren't together. They weren't taking long walks on the lakeside together. They weren't going to Costco together. Like they were not technically in a relationship yet. So it's I don't consider it cheating.
It's like a situationship. I don't know if you guys have heard that term. I heard that term last year. Learned what it was. That's what they have.
Absolutely. Justin, what do you think about it?
I just my heart breaks for Gambit because I don't want him to be tormented by that. I don't want anyone to have to go through that, and it feels uncomfortable to watch it. I also seeing Morph and the amount of trauma they're working through with being alone and then being confronted by Sinister in the shower and just the demons that they have in their past from that experience and from that manipulation by Sinister is just that's really deep. And I feel like whatever Maddie was tapping into, she got everyone. Like she read the whole team like a book. It was like, hey, this is what's churning inside, and I'm gonna make it that much worse for your faces. And I wonder what Logan saw because we didn't see him.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
right? But
Hmm.
Jubilee and Sunspot are watching The Ring, and then it comes alive in their living room.
So triggering for me. That
Right?
movie really, really ruined
But honestly, every time I watched it, I focused in on what a different character or a couple of characters were going through, and following how Sunspot's really dealing with that relationship with his mom and his disappointment at, or kind of a shame feeling of being a mutant and not wanting to feel like, or not feeling as though he can be himself in front of his parents. And I felt like that, even though it was just quickly in that reaction and interaction with the mom demon, that hit the story that is ongoing with him, and just like, hey, yeah, we're still playing with this. It's still going to come up. Whatever he has his solo.
Yeah, I absolutely. And the one thing that I found, unless I'm like completely like brain farting this one out, Logan didn't get a horror sequence and all that.
Yeah, I didn't notice that until you said it.
Hmm. I mean, they did that in the earlier seasons. They kind of did a little bit of that, where like he got his head really screwed with, and he left for a while and went and
Right.
fought Sabretooth elsewhere because nothing cures his ills more than beer and fighting Sabretooth. But we then then we kind of like get our like first like big, I guess really the big like X-Men fight scene of this episode where they're fighting all the demons. The manifested demons, and yeah, again we see this like tactical thing, like they kind of like add him for a little bit, and then Bishop is like, oh, the hell with this, Scott hit me, and charges up and then just goes nuts on everything. Yeah, what'd you think of the big fight scene, Alicia?
Oh, I love the fight. I think visually they're always just so stunning and so smooth. And I think it's cool to see the different ways like they power each other up. Like we got the Gambit Wolverine power up, then we have Cyclops powering up but Bishop, and then at one point Bishop literally just grabs Wolverine and tosses him at Hank so that he can catch Beast as he's falling from the sky. Just seeing how they bounce off each other quickly, and then I don't know, I will never get over the fact of like the moment with Bishop and Cyclops finish and they both look at each other and they both say you're welcome at the same time. Like, just it was great.
Yeah, Justin, how about you?
I thought like that fight had so much to it. It had so many different moments for everyone. It had layers with the battle. I mean, we want to skip ahead of how it goes down afterwards when Jean comes in, but there's so many different ways that they're using the powers to play off of each other. We got our first big battle against those Sentinels. Everybody's displaying their abilities, but now we're starting to intertwine what their abilities can be. Even in the first episode, right? That combo move with Logan and Gambit. And now what else can we do? You called it reverse fastball special, essentially, as Bishop is fastballing Wolverine into Bishop to save, into Beast to save him, so he's knocked off from falling into the fire. Would that fire, is that actual fire,
Right.
Is this hellscape real to the touch, or is that all a mental illusion that Maddie's tapping into with the telepathy? And then obviously the blue sphere of saving comes in, and Jean omegas it up to solve the issues around. So that was just a great display of power for her. And then, of course, textbook Jean, she faints.
Yeah.
That's how we knew it was Jean in the doorway, because she just fainted.
Right.
Yeah, every fan was like, that's her.
Yeah.
That's the real one.
Yep. Can I just say the score for this fight scene was very cool to listen to. Like, I don't know if it's on Spotify yet, but I actually want to go back and listen to that score.
Yeah.
From, like, the past few episodes, actually. They've been amazing. But I think the, like, techno X-Men theme type of music that was playing during this fight scene just fit really well, and fit well with the decade as well. Like, it was pretty awesome to listen to.
Yeah.
But yeah, that power up. I love when they power up together. It's like when you're playing a video game and they do a team up. That's literally what it is. Like a Marvel vs. Capcom or what's the other one? Ultimate Alliance, or I don't know. But it's really cool to see them play off of each other, because that's how much they've trained together, one, and two, that's how well they know each other. They know what each other's next moves are going to be or their instincts, and they play it off so well. And it's really nice to see because I feel like we don't really see many team ups in Marvel movies. And then it's just much easier to do a lot more team ups in animation than it is in live action, which I totally understand. But I'm just saying, when we get the X-Men in the MCU, I need to see all these team ups. Like, I need to see some hardcore team ups. That's all they would do, because they are a team. They're more family than team, but when they come together, they really show up for each other. So.
Yeah, they all have all the hours they've been putting in the danger room working out these different combos.
Yeah, and Rogue and Magneto especially. I wonder what their power up is.
I got the stamina.
That combo move on
They've got a move they perfected called the Heartbreaker.
Yeah.
And so we're a little over halfway through, folks. Everybody who's listening, if you got any questions you want to ask that we'll address at the end, go ahead and drop them in the question option down there in the bottom. The cool thing is, I feel like after this we move into like, okay, we need to get together and we got to go get Nate. Like, we got to go get the baby. We got to, deal with this goblin woman, whatever she's calling herself.
Yeah.
And they do it, and I think that it's really neat in there when Magneto is like doing everything in his power to go full Magneto, and still like a completely unhinged Madeline Pryor basically proves that she could body him if she wanted to.
Yeah.
And that whole sequence there with the glass and the metal, I thought was really awesome. What do you think, Stefania?
Well, I just want to say, I think Madeline just wanted to see Magneto with no shirt on. I'm just saying. That's probably. But yeah, he got messed up. I mean, he got knocked out. And then after that with Madeline and Cyclops, like Cyclops lasers her right in the lips and the mouth, and there's blood, so that's how you know it's not like. It's a little more mature than the animated series was. And then she wipes it off and she goes and like kisses him on the lips. Like, girl, that's gross. Like, that's so gross. But obviously she doesn't care. But I find that I just love that she's so unhinged, like she does stuff like that and she doesn't care because she is a goblin queen, emphasis on the queen. But the fact that she can just body everybody, especially Magneto, is insane. And you saw he was putting up a fight, and it just, as much as he was doing it, it was cutting him up so badly. I love the fact that we saw magic, though, which was awesome. I'm loving these little cameos. Thank you, Morph, for doing that for us. I'm loving all these cameos that we're seeing. I can't wait to see them, like, for real. And I hope that we get like something with New Mutants in the future. Maybe not in this season, or maybe the end of the season. Sneak peek, I guess. Maybe more so in like the next few seasons or something. But yeah, I know. Goblin Queen. She a queen. She baddie.
She slayed.
She slayed.
Alicia, what do you think?
Well, I also would just like to second the New Mutants. We were talking about that the other day, and I was saying, like, maybe that could just be like the cliffhanger for the end of season 1. Oh, look, the
spin-off.
Spin-off, yeah.
Properties, spin it off.
But I thought that fight sequence was amazing. I mean, second to everything Stefania said, but also the moment when like Magneto pauses and he realizes that she's not in front of him anymore, and you like see the fear in his face, and he like turns to the side. That's like the moment where he acknowledges what we are feeling of, I'm not necessarily going to win this fight. Like, I don't have this one in the bag, which was nice to kind of see that dynamic in Magneto, because so far he's been, very stoic and very reserved, and that was like a different flavor of his character that we got to see for a second. Magic alone, amazing, but magic into Darkchild, like, and just the moment of, Goblin Queen just putting her hand on Morph and saying like, if you want to play, like, you're going to play on my team.
Yes, my queen.
And just that whole transformation, animation-wise, gorgeous and just like so satisfying to me as a huge Magic fan of just like, yes, a taste of something spectacular. And I love the toying with Scott. You know, it's that this I'm gonna take a moment out of fighting just to like toy with you and, you know, keep you as my pet for a moment. And I love it. And then everything gets even more epic when Jean comes in from
Mm-hmm.
a bar.
Yeah.
Justin, what do you think?
I mean, I love Magneto, and to see him, this whole episode, I called it the other day. It's just like he's given off real alpha dog energy. He's come into the room. He's like, no, I'm now calling the shots. Rogue is now with me. I'm saying like status report Cyclops. I'm doing the big fight, and you know, for as much as I love him, this was a tempering of the man and the legend of power. I thought that this was just a great way to show that, like, no, there are some things that you don't have as confidently as you think you do, and to actually show that counterbalance and to display how much power Maddie was able to throw at him, and to really manipulate the whole room in that way, really fighting him. I felt like that was a great way to challenge what they had been setting up in a couple of key moments. Just like the way he was calling things throughout the episode beforehand, and Maddie toying with everyone. I want to know whether it's Morph that knew of Ilyana or somehow Maddie that knew of Ilyana, especially in the New Mutants outfit, especially with the Dark Child persona. You know, like, who's tapping into this knowledge? How is this a part of the lore that could be the hellfire and brimstone that she's raising from the ground below them? There's so much complexity to what they're playing with that we're only getting little dabbles of, but it's setting up that there is a deeper world beneath the surface.
Yeah, and I think also with that, one of the fun things has been, as all of us sitting here know, the X-Men universe is so expansive character-wise.
Right.
Like, and Morph is a really great vehicle to do cameos.
Yeah.
And get fans go, ooh, look, just like that Leonardo DiCaprio meme, like, because we've seen Psylocke, we've seen Magic, we've seen Blob, we've seen Colossus, we've seen Spiral, it's kind of a fun way. Even sometimes I'm waiting for him to do like some really deep cut character, the people who have just watched the animated, even people who have just watched the animated wouldn't know who Magic is, so that's really interesting. Now, the thing that I may have missed this, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I sort of feel like the majority of the time in the original animated series, whenever we see Jean Grey, she has her hair up. And a lot of the times, especially in episode 1 and 2 of X-Men 97, her hair is down. And I'm picking up on that as a subtle thing where they're like, that's how they're telling the difference between the two. And when Jean finally remembers who she is and sits up, the first thing she does is put her hair up in a ponytail. She's like, it's time to do some bad bitch shit. Like, it is time to roll on this thing. And she rolls in, like, for as badass as we just established, like, Madeline is, like, Jean rolls in, like, psychically the same way Storm did, I believe, in episode 1. I don't know. Do you think I'm totally wrong? What do you think, Alicia?
I definitely think there are differences like that they showed us, especially with the animation of their hair. Even if you look at like the shaping of Maddie's hair versus Jean's hair, like Jean's hair looks like thinner strips and it's like almost straighter, and Maddie's is like thicker chunks and a little bit more wavy. So I think like right off the bat when you see, Jean come and faint, I immediately recognize the differences in like the style of their hair in animation. But I love the moment of like, I'm putting my hair up because I have to like go to work. Like I've got to get this done. And like, even though she's not even physically leaving, just that notion of, it's time to like get serious, but also the nod to her original, like, appearance and the fact that she's got the ponytail all the time, I think is cool. But Justin had pointed out the other day when we were talking about it, he was like, yeah, but then when she's like in the astral plane, her hair is down. And I'm like, because that's not her physically doing the work. She's like, she's connecting, she's free, she's soft. When she's sitting up, she's like, it's time to get to work.
Yeah. Ponytail is
Yeah. Yeah. So that is that your kind of the same takeaway then too, Justin?
the Ponytail is so connected to Jean in the animated series, and I just feel like obviously that is the two things that I don't want to say are made fun of, but like are troped when representing Jean in the animated series. It's the fainting and it's the ponytail, and it's like, you know, so to just hit the nail on the head. No, this is Jean. This is the real one. Or you know, like that feels weird too, because I have a love for Madeline as a character as well, and that as a concept in this episode of identity and what you get to be when you have this manipulation and this force, and you know, Sinister playing this god complex where he is the father, you know, what you need to call me. I just, there's so much, and even just what he's trying to do with Nathan, there's so much in terms of manipulation and control and agency, and trying to find out what a character can and cannot do. It's just, it's a complex, and to tackle that all in 30 minutes and to make it beautiful and to make it interesting and exciting is like,
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Stefania, what do you got?
I think they did really well with this part of the show, tapping into Maddie and Jean's mind. And there, I mean, you have to understand that we as viewers are trying to figure out when they were swapped, and they also are trying to figure out when they were swapped. And so going back and seeing their memories, seeing the portraits especially, and you're like, when did they switch? Because it's so not confusing, but like it's interesting.
yeah.
And I know I've read a few theories and stuff like that, and I've seen ones where it's like, oh, Jean and Scott's wedding, or like the end of season 5, and now I want to like actually go back to the previous show and actually watch those episodes and see if I could point it out too. But I like the fact that we can distinguish the ponytail and the hair down with Maddie and Jean. And that's why one of the reasons why I'm excited to read the X-Men 97 comic, because I get like a prequel into this show and what has gone down, and if there are any other times where Maddie, like Jean Maddie had kind of run into Sinister, or like telepathically or mentally has before, or if this is the first time since they were swapped. And the whole sequence with just the depth it went to, you know, Jean swallowing both of them whole, and then going back to like the very beginning when their powers manifested. It's a roller coaster experience for both us and them, especially Maddie, because she's the one that's like in deep, and she has to get herself out of it, and Jean's helping her out. And eventually it goes back to Cable, Nathan, the baby. Like, this is pure love, and you have to like embrace it and remember it and cherish it. That's why it's like so sad at the end. We'll talk about it, but at the end with her and Nathan, what happens. But I I think the part where like the baby comes out, and like Maddie's just like goes to him, and he's crying and she doesn't know what's going on, and it's a mental roller coaster, and it's crazy because you can only imagine what they're going through. Right. We're just watching it, but them, the characters, they are going crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It makes
we had. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm sorry. It makes you really appreciate the way that Jean handles the situation.
Yeah.
Because everyone is very standoffish to Maddie and just like decides to separate themselves, but Jean is the only one who's trying to approach her from a way of like everyone else is basically saying, you're a clone, you no longer have ownership of this part of your life, and Jean is the one who's approaching it saying, like, she's like, when did we get our powers? What is this memory for us? And she's like acknowledging that even though they are not the same person, they do share this part of their history, and that's all that Maddie knows. Like she fully believes that she was that old, even though Beast is saying, you know, your DNA markers don't say that you're that old. So it's really a great character moment for Jean as well, because she's saying and acknowledging that, like, you are your own version of me, even with, and then become your own version of yourself, you know, like, but I'm not going to discredit that just because I'm the one who actually lived this, that it doesn't feel real to you. And I think that that's that whole process, and into the connection to the baby, and realizing that, like, these things that formed me actually formed both of us, but then from this point on, you are your own person. This is your baby. There's no denying that you are his mother. Like, that's who you are. And you know, like, we share this other thing, I think is really cool and beautiful, and I think a really important factor in Maddie's switch, and her ability to relinquish Sinister's control of her, and like move forward to be able to take the next steps that she has to work with the team to save the baby, and then, you know, all the things she has to go through after she finally saves her son.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really. I thought it was really interesting the way, like, Jean of all people should have been the most angry and the most bitter towards Madeline over, like, basically I got swapped out. You came in. By the way, I'm going with the wedding theory. I'm going with they got swapped out of the wedding. That's my personal belief. Like, you're the one who ended up getting to, like, marry my husband. You're the one who clearly did all the things involved that require the making of a child with him. You had that child, and all this time, you know, and yet Jean's the one who has the most compassion for her, right? Like, just like you said, like, Jean's the one who's actually, like, in a way, like, emotionally holding her hand and being like, I know this sucks. This really sucks.
Yeah.
This is like,
That
that's
is
real shitty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never really been a Jean fan, but that's Jean. You know, she is the one that cares. She is the one. She is the heart. Oftentimes, when I love X-Men Red, the short run that she is a leader in a team, and she is leading with compassionate heart and trying to bring these people together. And I just, and especially there was maybe like a year or so ago when in the comics Jean and Madeline make peace, and it is her drive, her desire to share these memories with Madeline, the feelings that she doesn't have access to because of what went down with the cloning and creation, and the separation from, like, Maddie not being the one to be able to have spent any time with baby Nathan before what happened to her with Inferno, and even just to, like, Nathan only here for a hot second, and then Sinister's like, oh goody babies, you know. I love what they did to redeem Maddie's actions in Inferno from the comics to the show, because when in the comics, like, she is all sacrifice babies, let's unleash hell on earth and create this portal of demons, even my own. I mean, that's fine. It's, you know, easy, accessible. No, she at least loves her child here and is fighting for her child. And same with Scott, as they, like, fight against this ridiculous monster of a villain that we all love and hate, and have all these mixed up feelings because he's so devious.
Yeah, and well, first of all, I want to say, like, if I ever miss anybody going around the horn, please call me out on it. I have horrible ADD, and I get so wrapped up in the conversation. If I ever like, oh, by the way, skipped over me, let me know. Yeah. And speaking of which, we got you know, obviously Nate now with the techno organic virus. You know, and it's decided, and it was interesting how they set up those threads from, like, the very first episode of Beast working on Bishop's time displacement device, and oh, by the way, it's finally ready, right in time to get this Corona baby out
What
of
a
here.
coincidence.
Yeah, before it gets the rest of us sick.
Just them saying, like, oh yeah, I know a guy in the future, he could probably fix this. Let me take the baby. Don't worry about it. Oh, I just, Forge is going to save all the problems.
Yeah. In the future and in the present.
Yeah. Well, and I think here we definitely get another display of Scott's poor inability to handle anything emotional, because he's like, I won't abandon my child the way I was. 2 seconds later, all right, I can't deal with this. Peace out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His solution is just to leave
Yeah.
and not really like talk through things.
Yeah.
And but you also have to understand like his father. He was abandoned when he was a kid, and he feels that deep down he's not going to abandon his kid. And it's just like, I mean, like I feel for you, but it's like you are definitely Nathan's father, and Madeline is Nathan's mother. But Jean, poor Jean, that ain't her child, and yet that is her man.
That
And so, like,
mom of the
you can
year
imagine,
award.
yeah, you can imagine what she's feeling, right? And seeing it's not really like that moment with Scott and Nathan, like in the medical ward. Um, it's more so the moment with Madeline and Nathan before they go. Nathan goes through with Bishop to the future. I think that was really a touching moment and a very emotional moment so far in the show in the series. So that's one of my favorite parts.
Yeah. When Nathan like reaches for her and cries
Yeah, and
over
cries.
her shoulder, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my heart.
No.
And just a really quality condensation or condensing of the plot to be able to say, okay, the after effects of Nathan being affected, the future tie in with Bishop, Bishop serving in a role that was otherwise Rachel and the Phoenix in the comics, and them just using what they have as the tools for the show and what came from the animated show and what they're working with for the season to be able to tell this story in a way that still honors the past but makes it work for the current show that they have.
Yeah, I love it, and thankfully it's been pretty good in terms of people getting mad about canon. Like you understand, it's an adaptation; they have to do
Mm-hmm.
things differently, and I
Right.
think thus far they've done really brilliant with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that it's left at the end too, like even though when Maddie leaves and she like chooses a name for herself and her and Jean have that moment outside the mansion, like that doesn't feel to me that we're never gonna see her again. Like that
Yeah.
feels that she's going off on an adventure of her own to become her own person, and then once she figures out who that person is, we may very well see her again. Like, so even though we got so much of her story in this episode, it don't feel like she's a one and done character. I feel like they worked really hard to make her feel like she had an identity and was a part of the family in some way, and so we are not saying goodbye to her.
Yeah. And it's just funny to me because we see all these storylines and plots that are happening, and people that know the comics are just like, don't worry, we'll see them again. We're going to see Cable again, don't worry, he's going to be okay. Rogue and Cable are going to end up together, don't worry. And to see reactions from people that don't know the comics is just like, don't worry. But it's like really nice, fun to see you guys like squirm because we know what's going on and you guys don't, and we're just excited to see your reaction. But I just find that so funny when I see all the reactions online about this episode and just the plots that are happening.
Yeah, and speaking of which, as we move to like the very end of this episode where Forge pops up, I'm a little sketchy on this, so correct me if I'm wrong, ex-readers. But in canon, was Forge not the one who built the gun
Yeah.
that took her powers away?
Yeah.
And then she found out about that after he assisted her in getting her powers back?
She finds out before the powers come back. She actually finds out while at his house. He's got this crazy space age penthouse.
Yeah.
He's just wearing his short shorts and he's like, "Hey, Forge, hello. It's a great first." But she finds out that he's the one that's created this power taking weapon. Much later, he is the one that solves the issue, but that life death issue is, at least the first one, is very, very emotional for a comic. To have such depth and such, I think it's Barry Windsor Smith on the pencils, and the way that he is just rendering her sadness throughout as she's struggling with this loss of identity. And we have Life Death as episode titles coming up. So
Yeah.
the fact that the story is being teed up here in a post-credit scene and then will get played out in this fight to reclaim herself is really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's an episode I'm very excited for, especially since not too long ago I found the comic when I was at Midtown in New York. So I'm very excited for those episodes, the Life Death ones.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a great arc for Storm.
Yeah, so
And
great. And
like crying when she lost her powers. So
yeah, and just like to see her come back and just be like even more powerful is just going to be so amazing.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm excited about it. Like, it definitely felt like, yeah, we were sad to see Storm lose her powers, but that also told you she was about to go off on a very important quest. That
Mm-hmm.
Storm will be back as full. Like, they don't do the whole thing of like Omega level threat detected, and then she's powerless the rest of the series, right?
Well, the fact that they took her out of the opening credits too, like they removed her intro name title because she has left the team, and that kind of felt. If you noticed that watching in, I was like, oh no, what's going on? She's going off on her side quest, and then when she comes back, I wonder if they'll change the card to be her punk rock look.
Well, that'd be
cool, right? Is it get a new animated card for that different style, that different era of Storm?
Right. Yeah. Don't worry, guys. Aurora will be back on the lunchbox.
Right.
Well, they all the intros are different for each episode, so it's on purpose like that, so you don't skip the intro. We never skip it in this household. I'll tell you that. So everything, there are things that are going to be different in each intro, so do not skip it. Even though there's a skip option, ignore it. They should have just taken it away for this show. I don't know why they added it in. It just ruins it. It does not exist.
All right. Right. Well, here at the very end, we have some questions from the viewers. First question comes from Warlion Comics. Why do you guys think that Sinister didn't think of Nate graying Nate instead of creating Maddie, swapping her gene, and then fight the X-Men to get the baby?
Oh, like just make a baby?
Yeah.
Because then you got to capture Cyclops, and then that's like a weird, like, that's levels of creative relation. I don't think we're getting into in a all ages cartoon. I've gone to, I don't call it a kids show. It's an all ages show because I am hyped as any kid that it is acceptable for. But yeah, a couple levels too sinister.
Well, I also think that in a way, tactically, it does a little bit make sense because it's like if you create Madeline, swap them out, then when she gets pregnant, you can activate her and she can pick up the baby and just walk out the front door.
Which is what happened.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the fact that she brought the baby to him because his power over her was enacted.
Yeah, through the baby monitor, which is the creepiest way of doing it.
Yeah. I'm going to mess with a baby monitor for a cosplay sometime. All right. Cody Carrillo wants to know, if Rogue didn't exist, who would Steph's favorite X-Man be?
So who's my second favorite, I guess?
Yeah.
It changes from time to time, if I'm being honest. I think my second favorite X-Men character might be Nightcrawler. I just love Nightcrawler. Something about him. I mean, it always intrigued me. Of course, I can't go rogue. I have to go with her stepbrother, right? So I have always just found Nightcrawler so interesting when I started getting into X-Men and just his story and stuff, and I just loved. I think what really got me so interested in him was the fact that he was all blue and he could just poof in and out of anywhere. I found that so cool to do, and then the fact that I love when he has his swords because it just makes him even more Nightcrawler, and he just goes he has so many like ways he could use him too, and his tail can do so much, and he's just cool. He's really cool.
Mm-hmm. Oh, dude. Next one is: do you think Madeline Pryor should have been introduced in an arc rather than a one-episode story similar to the Inferno arc? Alicia, what do you think about that question?
I mean, I wouldn't. I feel conflicted. Okay, I think this episode was so great that I don't feel like it did the story a disservice or like it diminished the story in any way. But would I watch more episodes with Maddie like being the fierce Goblin Queen? 100%. I mean, I think what is going to be interesting is to look back at the season as a whole when the whole thing is out and kind of feel like what is the arc of the full season? What were they trying to tell us with all of the stories? Because one thing I really feel about this story is they took such a span of time in the comics, and what they really focused in was like, what are the key points of Madeline's character development in these stories, and how do we take those and develop her as a character in one episode versus are we really trying to tell the story of Inferno, or are we trying to build Maddie as a character? So I think because they focused it down to building up who she is, I didn't need the full arc because I could just get her now she's a player in the game and we can move on to like continuing the world building for all of the characters. I think it's going to be interesting to see if they're able to pepper in like a deep story for a bunch of characters through, because they only have 10 episodes. So with 10 episodes, you want to be able to highlight multiple storylines. So I feel like for what they're doing for this show, it makes sense how they did it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Justin, how about you?
And I loved it. It's like a sampler pack. You know, you can get a little trial of Inferno, and if you want the full shebang, if you've already been familiar with the whole thing, you know, we have this thing. It's called trade paperback. You can read yourself the full Inferno.
I love how you had that on hand.
Oh. Yeah, I'm in the middle of reading it actually.
Awesome.
I don't want a one-to-one recreation, but I think that the way that they dabbled into it, there's still some opportunity to explore limbo and the demons, and you don't know like how much can they get into that. Can they make a full arc of in hell essentially? I like what you were saying, Alicia, about sampling across this season, because yes, diehard X-Men fans that loved Inferno, we would have watched 3 episodes of this, but the amount of like 3 that gave you the flavor of it, and now we get to bring in a different aspect of the story and continue to give you this wide breadth of what the X-Men are. And then maybe in season 2, you know, we'll get more 2-episode arcs. Actually at the end of this one we have a 3-episode arc. That's the end of the. So that's where they wanted to focus, was really the ending, everything building to that. Ah, man, that'd be cool if Maddie comes back.
I would love if Maddie comes back. She will.
Right.
She's coming back.
Mm-hmm. I mean, she wouldn't have a figure if she wouldn't come back. So
I would have a pop of her if she's just here for a hot second.
Exactly. You know? I do too somewhere around here. I do.
Steph, where are you on that thinking?
I mean, they really all said everything that I was thinking. And I know people were complaining about pacing for these episodes and stuff. I thought the pacing in this one was great. And, you know, with it only being 10 episodes, they did a great job with putting the storyline just in one. And you got a little taste. You got a little taste of Inferno. Like you said, you could just pick up the trade and read the whole storyline if you want to, read the whole arc. But we are going to see Maddie again, and I'm super, super excited to see her when she comes back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, there we are, folks. That is our recap of episode 3 of X-Men '97. Alicia, Justin, Steph, thank you so much. This will be saved onto my Instagram. It will also go onto YouTube later, sometime when I'm on a flight leaving WonderCon and I have time to do all the editing stuff, or maybe I'll have time this afternoon if the rain keeps up. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, thank you guys so very much. Thank you everybody for tuning in and checking this thing out.
Woohoo,
yeah. Thank you for having us.
Enjoy.
Yeah, have fun at WonderCon.
I'm gonna try. We got for anybody who's here watching, we have the X-Men 97 fandom panel at 7 p.m. Pacific time. I'm going to attempt to live stream it.
Ooh.
So I asked if there was anything morally or ethically or legally wrong with me doing it, and I was told, wink, wink, go for it. So, so provided I can get good connection, I'm going to live stream that thing here on my Instagram. So, but yeah, once again, thank you guys, and yeah, look forward to talking to you guys again in the future.
Thanks so much.
Thanks
Yeah.
so
Bye, everyone.
much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.